From Savannah's misty squares to the dark waters of the Altamaha River, Georgia holds ancient secrets and whispered stories that refuse to fade. Today, we're bringing 17 of the Peach State's most haunting legends back to life, tales that still echo through the pines and send shivers down southern spines. The Altamaha. Deep in the winding waters of Georgia's Altamaha River, where cypress trees rise from the fog and Spanish moss drips like curtains, folks have whispered about something strange for centuries. The Muscogee Creek people spoke of a powerful creature that lived beneath the muddy waters, a serpent-like beast with a long neck and sharp gator-like jaws. Locals today still call it Alti. The earliest settlers near Darien, Georgia, heard strange splashes at night and sometimes caught a glimpse of a hump rising from the river. Some said it moved too fast to be a log, too big to be a fish, and didn't make waves like a boat. A few brave boaters claimed it had ridged scales, bulging eyes, and could dive without a sound. Modern reports haven't stopped. In fact, fishermen and kayakers still say they've seen something long and gray slipping through the mist. One man even described it as a living submarine with flippers. Wildlife experts often chalk it up to alligators or schools of sturgeon, but deep down, locals know better. Whether it's a leftover from the dinosaur age or just a well-kept river secret, Alti has become a legend that refuses to fade. The river is quiet, but if you sit still enough at sunrise, you might just see a ripple that leads to something watching from below the dark water. The ghosts of Savannah. In the historic streets of Savannah, where gas lamps flicker and Spanish moss sways in the trees, the dead have never truly left. Known as America's most haunted city, Savannah holds more spirits than living souls, with every square, mansion, and cobblestone hiding a story that chills the blood. The sorrelweed house stands tall among them, where the sounds of a woman's screams still pierce the night. Legend says the wife of Francis Sorrel discovered his affair with a slave and leapt to her death from the balcony. Both women are said to remain, their spirits caught in an eternal struggle that visitors can still feel when they enter the home. At the Marshall House, once a hospital for wounded Civil War soldiers, guests report hearing phantom footsteps at night and seeing faucets turn on by themselves. Some have woken to find ghostly figures standing at the foot of their beds, only to vanish when spoken to. Perhaps most famous is Bonaventure Cemetery, where little Gracie Watson's statue is said to weep real tears when no one is watching. Visitors who've taken pictures claim to see orbs of light hovering near her grave, as if she's still playing among the tombstones. Even today, tour guides lead visitors through the haunted squares at night, recounting tales of duels, yellow fever, and restless spirits. In Savannah, the line between past and present, living and dead, blurs with every sunset. The Wog of Talbot County. In the dense woods of Talbot County, where pines grow tall and shadows run deep, there are whispers of a creature that's neither human nor animal. The locals call her the Wog, a wild girl who moves on all fours, her body covered in hair, her eyes glowing in the darkness like burning coal. The stories began in the 1940s when farmers started reporting livestock being killed in strange ways. Chickens with their heads twisted clean off, goats drained of blood with no tracks around them. Then came the sightings, a figure darting between trees, too fast to be human, but walking upright like no animal they'd ever seen. One hunter claimed he saw her drinking from a creek. She turned and stared at him, her face a twisted mix of wolf and child, before disappearing into the underbrush. Another family said she approached their farmhouse during a storm, scratching at the door and making sounds that were almost words but not quite human speech. Some believe she was a child abandoned in the woods, raised by wolves until she became something in between. Others say she's the spirit of a girl who was lost in the forest centuries ago, her soul fused with the wild things that found her. Even today, hikers and campers in Talbot County keep their fires burning all night, because when darkness falls over Georgia's woods, the line between myth and reality blurs, and the Wog still hunts among the shadows. Number 4. The Curse of Lake Lanier. Beneath the sparkling surface of Lake Lanier lies something most visitors don't know. Entire towns, roads, and cemeteries. When the man-made lake was created in the 1950s, the U.S. government flooded several communities, including homes, churches, and graves. Not all of it was moved. Some buildings still sit at the bottom of the lake, slowly crumbling in the dark. Since then, Lake Lanier has become known as one of the deadliest lakes in America. Hundreds have drowned in unexplained accidents. Boats have flipped on calm water. Experienced swimmers have vanished without a trace. And then there are the stories of phantom hands grabbing ankles, of ghostly figures floating just below the surface, and of a woman in a blue dress who appears on the shore, only to disappear when approached. Locals believe these strange events are tied to the town buried below. One famous legend tells of a woman killed in a 1958 car crash that sent her vehicle into the lake. When her remains were finally found decades later, people said her ghost had already been wandering the area for years. Even today, people visit Lake Lanier for fun, but many won't swim after sunset. The stories, the strange deaths, and the whispers of the drowned town make it clear there's something down there that was never meant to be disturbed. The Boo Hag. Along the Georgia coast, where salt marshes meet ancient oak trees, the Gula and Geechee people have long told tales of a creature that comes in the night, not to kill you, but to ride you until dawn. They call her the Boo Hag, a skinless witch who slips through cracks in windows and doors to sit on sleeping victims' chests and steal their breath. Unlike regular witches, the Boo Hag has no skin of her own. By day, she wears a stolen human skin to blend in with the living. But at night, she sheds this disguise, revealing her raw, red flesh before slipping out to find victims. Those who've been ridden by the Boo Hag wake exhausted, with unexplained scratches and a feeling of dread that lingers for days. The Gula people developed ways to protect themselves. They painted their windowsills and doorframes haint blue, a special shade believed to repel spirits. They scattered rice or salt by the door, forcing the Boo Hag to count every grain before entering, a task that kept her busy until sunrise sent her fleeing. Some say you can hear her approach, a soft scraping sound like dry skin on wood. Others claim she makes a hag light, a glowing orb that floats through the marshes as she hunts. For generations, parents along the coast have warned children to be good, or the Boo Hag might come riding. Even today, many coastal homes still feature haint blue paint, a silent reminder that some traditions and some fears never truly fade from memory. The ghost of the pirate's house. In the heart of Savannah stands the Pirate's House, a tavern built in 1753 that once served as a watering hole for sailors, smugglers, and pirates from across the 7 seas. But not everyone who entered the Pirate's House left alive. Beneath the floorboards runs a series of tunnels that once led straight to the Savannah River, where unwitting sailors were dragged after being drugged, only to wake up miles out at sea, forced into service on pirate ships. The most famous ghost haunting these tunnels is Captain Flint, the notorious pirate from Treasure Island, who supposedly died in an upstairs room, his last breaths cursing those who had wronged him. Staff and visitors report hearing his heavy boots stomping through the building late at night, accompanied by drunken laughter and the smell of rum. Others speak of a sailor who refuses to leave, his spirit caught in an eternal search for escape through the tunnels. Customers have felt cold hands brush against them in empty hallways, while waiters tell of glasses that slide across tables untouched and doors that slam shut against the wind. In the rum cellar, the oldest part of the building, visitors have captured photos of strange mists and orbs hovering near the entrance to the sealed tunnels. Some claim to hear desperate cries for help coming from behind the brick walls, echoes of those who never made it back to the surface. Today, the Pirate's House serves delicious food instead of drugged drinks, but after dark, the ghosts of its bloody past still roam the rooms, reminding guests of Savannah's darker maritime history. The Surrency Bright Light. In the small town of Surrency, Georgia, something strange began happening in the fall of 1872. Rocks flew through windows without breaking the glass. Chairs slid across rooms. Fires started in empty fireplaces. The Surrency family, a well-respected household in Appling County, had no idea what they were dealing with, only that their once peaceful home had turned into something out of a nightmare. The haunting grew worse. Clocks jumped off walls, shoes floated through the air, and books opened by themselves. It wasn't just the family who saw it. Neighbors, visitors, even railroad workers witnessed the strange events. Newspapers across the country reported on it, calling it one of the most baffling cases of the supernatural ever recorded in the South. But the most enduring mystery was the Surrency bright light, a glowing orb that appeared near the old homestead and along the nearby railroad tracks. The light would hover just above the ground, moving with purpose through the trees before vanishing without a trace. Some believed it was the spirit of Mr. Surrency, still trying to understand what had happened to his home. Some thought it was a hoax. Others believed the house had been built on cursed land or that the Surrency family had somehow stirred up something ancient. The family eventually moved out and the activity reportedly faded, but the legend didn't. The Surrency poltergeist remains one of Georgia's most widely documented and chilling ghost stories. To this day, Surrency is known for the haunting that shook the town. People who visit the area sometimes report feeling watched or hear knocks when no one is there. Whether it was a restless spirit, a curse, or something else, the Surrency bright light left behind a mystery that still rattles windows and imaginations. The Crybaby Bridge. Scattered across Georgia are bridges where the night never stays silent, where the wind carries sounds that freeze the blood, the wailing cries of an infant that never lived to see the light of day. These are the Crybaby Bridges, and each one holds its own tragic tale. In Columbus, the 13th Street Bridge stretches across the Chattahoochee River, where legend says a desperate mother threw her unwanted baby into the murky waters below. Now, visitors who park on the bridge at midnight, turn off their headlights, and place baby powder on their car hood claim to find tiny handprints in the powder when they return. Near Roswell, another bridge has earned the same chilling name. Here, the story tells of a young woman who discovered her pregnancy too late and delivered the child alone beneath the bridge, only for both mother and child to perish in the cold. Locals say, if you stand on the bridge at night and call out, "I have your baby," you'll hear the mother's frantic footsteps approaching from the darkness. The most famous Crybaby Bridge sits outside of Athens, where people report not just sounds, but sightings. A woman in white searching along the creek bed, her face twisted in grief as she calls for her child. Cars stall inexplicably on this bridge, and batteries drain without warning. These bridges have become testing grounds for teenage courage and paranormal investigators alike. But those who've heard the ghostly wails say it's not something they'll ever forget. The sound of a loss so deep that not even death could silence it. The Werewolf of Talbot County. In the dark woods of Talbot County, long before highways and streetlights, farmers told stories about something wild that roamed under the full moon. It wasn't just an animal. It was something in between. A man who became a beast, or a beast who knew how to walk like a man. They called it the Talbot Werewolf. The legend began in the 1800s when livestock started vanishing overnight. Goats were found torn apart, chicken coops ripped open, and strange clawed footprints circled barns. One hunter followed a trail and never came back. The only thing they found was his rifle, bent and broken like it had been snapped in half. Some say the werewolf was once a cursed settler, doomed to transform whenever the moon turned silver. Others believe it was a shapeshifter guarding something buried deep in the woods. People reported seeing yellow eyes in the dark, hearing snarls that didn't sound like any known animal, and even spotting a tall, fur-covered figure standing upright before vanishing into the trees. Those who've encountered the Talbot Werewolf speak of a deep unease, like being watched by something wild, intelligent, and ancient. The air grows still. Birds go silent. Some have turned to see glowing eyes peering at them from the trees, only for the figure to vanish before they can react. Today, the forest has grown quieter, but the stories still echo. Hikers sometimes hear howls on windless nights or feel watched when the trail grows narrow. In Talbot County, when the moon rides high and full, people still keep their doors locked tight against what might be lurking just beyond the light. The Cursed Tree of Athens. In the historic district of Athens, a massive white oak has stood for over 200 years, its branches spreading like protective arms over the land it guards. But this is no ordinary tree. Known as the Cursed Tree, or sometimes the Wedding Tree, it carries a warning that has kept even the bravest souls from disturbing its ancient wood. Legend says that in the early 1800s, a young bride was jilted at the altar by her would-be husband. Heartbroken and humiliated, she fled to this oak tree and hanged herself from one of its low branches. With her dying breath, she cursed the tree and anyone who might try to cut it down or harm it in any way. Since then, strange things have happened to those who've challenged the curse. One man who tried to remove a branch found his saw broke in half, slicing deep into his arm. A city worker who marked it for trimming fell ill with an unexplainable fever the very next day. Even those who take its acorns as souvenirs report bad luck following them home. Broken relationships, lost jobs, and disturbing dreams of a woman in white watching them sleep. Perhaps most chilling are the reports of a ghostly bride seen standing beneath the tree on foggy nights, her neck bent at an unnatural angle, her empty eyes scanning the street as if still waiting for her groom to appear. Today, the cursed tree continues to thrive despite its age, untouched by storms that have felled younger oaks around it. Locals treat it with respect, sometimes leaving flowers at its base, not for the tree itself, but for the broken-hearted bride whose spirit still guards it from beyond the grave. The haunted pillar of Augusta. On the corner of 5th and Broad Street in Augusta once stood a weathered stone column known as the Haunted Pillar. It wasn't particularly beautiful or even remarkable in appearance, but the stories surrounding it were enough to keep most people from touching it, let alone trying to move it. According to legend, the pillar was the last remaining piece of the lower market, which stood in Augusta until 1878. The market was a bustling place where farmers sold their goods and townsfolk gathered to trade news. But one day, a traveling preacher who had been denied permission to speak there placed a curse on the market, declaring that a great storm would destroy everything except for a single pillar, and that anyone who tried to move that pillar would meet a swift and terrible death. Not long after, a tornado tore through Augusta, reducing the market to rubble except for that one column. Over the years, the curse seemed to hold. Men who tried to relocate the pillar died in freak accidents. A construction worker who boasted he would tear it down was crushed when his truck inexplicably overturned. Another man who simply leaned against it fell ill and died within days. In 2016, the pillar was finally destroyed when a driver crashed into it. Many locals held their breath, waiting to see if the curse would claim another victim. The driver survived, but some say the curse has simply moved to the fragments of the pillar now stored away from public view. Though the original pillar no longer stands, its legend remains a powerful reminder of Augusta's mysterious past and the thin line between coincidence and curse. The Witch of Yazoo. Though the original legend comes from Mississippi, Georgia has its own version of the Witch of Yazoo, a tale that continues to chill those who hear it. In the small town of Dalton, there's an old cemetery where one particular grave sits apart from the others, surrounded by a chain that no one dares to cross. The story goes that in the late 1800s, a woman lived alone on the outskirts of town, practicing dark magic and terrorizing local children. The townsfolk avoided her, crossing to the other side of the street when they saw her coming and warning their children to stay away from her small, crooked house by the swamp. One night, the sheriff was called to investigate strange noises coming from her property. What he found was the witch caught in quicksand, slowly sinking into the earth. Instead of helping her, he watched as she sank, listening as she placed a curse on the town with her final breath, swearing she would rise from her grave in 20 years and burn the entire town to the ground. The sheriff marked the spot, and when they dug her body out, they buried her in the cemetery with a heavy stone to keep her in the ground. Exactly 20 years later, a massive fire swept through Dalton, destroying much of the town. When residents checked the witch's grave after the fire, they found the chains broken and deep claw marks etched into the inside of her coffin lid, as if something had clawed its way out. Today, visitors to the cemetery report feeling a chill near her grave, even on the hottest summer days. Some claim to see a hunched figure moving among the tombstones at dusk, only to vanish when approached. The chains around her grave are replaced regularly, though no one admits to breaking them. The ghosts of Andersonville Prison. In the quiet countryside of southwest Georgia stands a solemn reminder of America's darkest chapter, the site of Andersonville Prison, where nearly 13,000 Union soldiers died during the Civil War. Today, it's a national historic site, but after the tour buses leave and darkness falls, something remains that no museum plaque can explain. Guards and visitors have reported hearing the sounds of men moaning in pain, calling out for water, or whispering names of loved ones they never saw again. Phantom drummers beat out military cadences in the night, and the clinking of invisible chains echoes across the empty grounds. Some have even seen full apparitions, gaunt men in tattered uniforms wandering aimlessly within the boundaries of what was once the prison. One of the most commonly cited spirits is that of Captain Henry Wirtz, the Confederate officer in charge of the prison who was later hanged for war crimes. His ghost is said to appear near the headquarters, still carrying out inspections of a prison that no longer exists. Others report seeing a figure that matches the description of the Andersonville raider, a prisoner executed by his fellow captives for stealing food from the starving men. Park rangers who work late have felt sudden drops in temperature and the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Equipment malfunctions without explanation, batteries drain instantly, and cameras often capture strange orbs of light hovering above the fields where thousands of men drew their last breaths. For those who've experienced Andersonville after dark, the prison never truly closed. The suffering that took place there has seeped into the very soil, creating a haunting that time cannot erase, a ghostly roll call that continues night after night for soldiers who never made it home. The Devil's Tramping Ground. Deep in the pine forests of central Georgia lies a perfect circle where nothing grows. No grass, no weeds, not even moss dares to creep across its edge. The soil is ash-gray and compacted, as if something has been pacing there for centuries. Locals call it the Devil's Tramping Ground, and few will approach it after dark. According to legend, this barren circle is where the devil himself comes to walk each night, pacing in circles as he plots his evil deeds. The heat from his hooves scorches the earth, making it impossible for life to take root. Some say objects left in the circle at dusk will be found tossed outside its boundary by morning, as if something had angrily swept them away. Hunters who've stumbled across the circle report feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, and dogs refuse to cross its perimeter, instead whining and pulling at their leashes to get away. There are tales of campers who, on a dare, set up tents within the circle, only to be driven away by nightmares so vivid they woke screaming, or by the sound of heavy footsteps circling their tents when no one was there. Scientists have tried to explain the phenomenon, suggesting everything from natural gas leaks to mineral deposits that poison the soil. But these explanations don't account for the perfect circularity or the strange occurrences reported by those who visit. Though shared with North Carolina folklore, Georgia's Devil's Tramping Ground has its own unique history. Even today, locals avoid it, especially during stormy nights when lightning illuminates the circle, sometimes revealing, they say, a tall shadow walking its perimeter, head bowed in contemplation of horrors yet to come. The Moon-Eyed People. Before European settlers arrived in the mountains of North Georgia, the Cherokee told stories of an ancient race that had come before them, pale beings with strange eyes that couldn't bear the light of day. They called them the Moon-Eyed People, for they could only see when the moon shone on the land. These beings were said to be small in stature, with skin as white as clay, and large, round eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. The Cherokee believed they had built the stone structures and mounds found throughout the region, working only at night and retreating to caves when the sun threatened to rise. Legend says that the Moon-Eyed People were eventually driven away by the Creek or the Cherokee themselves, forced westward until they disappeared from memory, or perhaps they simply went deeper underground, finding darkness where they could continue to thrive. Some historians connect this legend to the mysterious Fort Mountain stone wall in North Georgia, a structure that predates Cherokee settlement and whose origins remain unexplained. Others point to later sightings of pale nocturnal figures in the mountains as evidence that the Moon-Eyed People never truly left. In the small towns nestled in Georgia's mountains, old-timers still warn children not to wander too far after dark, especially near ancient caves or stone structures. Because when the moon is full and the forest falls quiet, the pale descendants of the Moon-Eyed People might still be watching from the shadows, their luminous eyes tracking movement in the night. A reminder that humans weren't the first to claim this land, and perhaps aren't the only ones who still call it home. The Headless brakeman of Macon. The railroad tracks that cut through Macon have carried more than just cargo and passengers over the years. According to local legend, they also carry the restless spirit of a brakeman who lost more than just his life in a tragic accident. He lost his head. In the late 1800s, when steam engines roared through Georgia connecting cities and towns, a young brakeman was working the night shift. As the story goes, he was leaning out too far, checking the tracks ahead when the train entered a narrow tunnel. The space between the train and the tunnel wall was too small, and in an instant, he was decapitated. Since that night, railroad workers and those living near the tracks have reported seeing a figure carrying a lantern, walking alongside the rails and occasionally stopping to wave the light back and forth as if signaling to an approaching train. The figure wears an old-fashioned railroad uniform, but where his head should be, there's nothing but empty air above his shoulders. Some claim to have heard a voice calling out, "All clear ahead," just before the phantom appears, while others say the temperature drops dramatically when he's near. The most chilling accounts come from engineers who swear they've seen him standing on the tracks at night, swinging his lantern in warning before vanishing as the train passes through him. Old railroad men in Macon never laugh at these stories. They simply nod and say that the headless brakeman is still doing his job, trying to prevent others from suffering his fate. When trains pass through Macon after midnight and the whistle blows, locals say it's not just a safety signal. It's a greeting to a fellow railroader who never completed his final journey. The Gopher tortoise's prophecy. In the sandy soils of South Georgia, the Creek people once shared a story about the humble gopher tortoise, a creature whose wisdom was as deep as the burrows it dug. This wasn't just any tale. It was a prophecy that some believe is still unfolding today. According to the legend, the Creator gathered all animals to share the gift of knowledge. Each would receive wisdom about the future, but they had to stay awake through the night to hear it. As darkness fell, animals began to drift off one by one. The deer, the fox, even the clever raccoon. By midnight, only the gopher tortoise remained awake, its eyes fixed on the Creator as the most important prophecies were revealed. The tortoise learned of a time when the waters would rise, when great storms would reshape the land, and when strange pale beings would arrive from across the sea. Most importantly, it learned which plants could heal and which could harm, knowledge it promised to keep safe within its shell until it was needed. The Creek believed that the tortoise's deliberate pace was not slowness but careful consideration, as it carried the weight of future knowledge on its back. They taught their children to respect the tortoise, never to harm it, and to watch for signs when one crossed their path. If a tortoise faced west while digging, rain would come. If it faced east, drought would follow. Even today, in the longleaf pine forests where gopher tortoises still dig their burrows, some old-timers pause when they spot one crossing the road. They watch which way it turns, remembering the ancient prophecy and wondering which pieces of the tortoise's knowledge are coming to pass in our time. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.